She could buy anything, command anyone, break empires with a signature. But Natalie Whitmore, the youngest billionaire CEO in Manhattan, couldn't win one man. Isaiah Brooks left at 5:27 p.m. every single day. No exceptions, no explanations. She offered him promotions. Power. Her. He said no. So she investigated him. What she discovered in room 314 of Riverside Neurological Care Center would shatter everything she thought she knew about strength, sacrifice, and love. Before we begin, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. And if you're ready for a journey that will break your heart and put it back together, hit that like button and stay until the very end. The glass walls of Titan Crest Capital's 47th floor reflected the amber glow of a Friday evening sunset across lower Manhattan. Traders packed their stations, analysts compared weekend plans, junior associates hustled to impress executives who'd already mentally checked out. And Isaiah Brooks stood up from his desk at exactly 5:27 p.m., just like he did every single day. Natalie Whitmore watched from her corner office, jaw tight. "He's doing it again?" she muttered. Her assistant Claire didn't look up from her tablet. "Ms. Whitmore, it's 5:30 on a Friday. Most people don't have his talent." Natalie's fingers drummed against her mahogany desk. "Most people don't turn down VP promotions twice in 1 year." Claire finally met her gaze. "Maybe he's just content?" Natalie laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nobody's content at 30 with that kind of brain. He's wasting himself." She'd built Titan Crest from a 2-person startup into a $12 billion private equity empire in 7 years. She'd acquired 17 companies, absorbed 3 competitors, and made Forbes' 30 under 30 list when she was 26. She understood leverage, negotiation, pressure points. But Isaiah Brooks was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Brilliant financial analyst, Yale graduate, predictive models so accurate they'd saved the firm $43 million last quarter alone. He should have been hungry, ambitious, ruthless. Instead, he was gone. Every day at 5:27 p.m., like clockwork. Natalie stood and walked to the window, watching Isaiah's lean figure cross the lobby 47 floors below. Even from this distance, she recognized his purposeful stride, the worn leather messenger bag over his shoulder, the way he never lingered to chat with colleagues. "Set up a dinner meeting," she said quietly. "Somewhere upscale. Tell him it's about the Henderson acquisition." Claire hesitated. "Ma'am, you already tried that twice." He said, "I know what he said." Natalie's reflection in the glass showed someone younger than her 29 years, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that had learned early how to hide vulnerability. "Try again anyway." Isaiah stepped onto the subway platform at Lexington Avenue, the rush hour crowd pressing around him like a living organism. He'd learned to navigate this daily migration without really seeing it. The tired faces, the scrolling phones, the defeat in shoulders hunched against another week's weight. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Dinner meeting request. Tuesday, 7 p.m. Henderson acquisition. He deleted it without responding. The train screeched into the station, and Isaiah let himself be carried aboard by the crowd's momentum. He found a spot near the doors, one hand gripping the pole, the other checking his watch. 5:43 p.m. Right on schedule. A younger analyst from Titan Crest, Marcus something, spotted him from across the car. "Hey, Brooks, heading to Murphy's?" "Few of us are grabbing drinks." Isaiah offered a polite smile. "Can't tonight. Thanks, though." "Can't or won't," Marcus grinned. "Come on, man. You're like a ghost. Nobody even knows where you live." "Uptown," Isaiah said simply. "Uptown's not a neighborhood. It's a direction." The train lurched. Isaiah steadied himself. "Have a good weekend, Marcus." The younger man shook his head, muttering something about wasting prime years. But Isaiah had already tuned him out. He'd become expert at deflection over the past 3 years. Polite but firm. Present but unreachable. At 96th Street, he exited and walked 4 blocks east, past bodegas with fruit stands bleeding onto sidewalks, past a playground where kids shrieked with Friday evening freedom, past the Albanian restaurant where the owner always nodded at him through the window. Riverside Neurological Care Center rose 12 stories in weathered brick, its facade speaking of decades past when hospitals were built with ambition instead of efficiency. Isaiah had memorized every crack in the steps leading to the main entrance, every flickering fluorescent light in the lobby, every squeaking wheel on the medication carts that passed through third-floor hallways. "Good evening, Mr. Brooks." The security guard, Raymond, looked up from his station with a warm smile. "Evening, Raymond. How's your daughter's recital coming along?" "She's nervous, but she'll be great. You still reading to Maya tonight?" "Every night." Raymond's expression softened. "You're a good man, Isaiah Brooks." Isaiah didn't respond to that. He just signed in, took the visitor badge he didn't technically need anymore, and headed to the elevator. Third floor, turn left, room 314. He paused outside the door like he always did, steadying his breath. Then he stepped inside. The late-day sun streamed through Venetian blinds, casting golden stripes across the medical equipment that surrounded the narrow bed. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. An IV drip caught the light. And there, small and still beneath white blankets, lay Maya, 11 years old. Dark curls spread across the pillow. Skin the color of her mother's, that beautiful deep brown that Isaiah used to trace with his fingers on lazy Sunday mornings in another life. "Hey, baby girl." He set his messenger bag down and pulled the chair close to her bedside. "Sorry I'm a few minutes late. Train was crowded." Maya didn't respond. She hadn't responded in 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days. But Isaiah talked to her anyway. He took her small hand in his, careful of the IV line, and began the ritual that had become his evening anchor. "So the Henderson deal is getting interesting. The CEO thinks he can bluff his way to better terms, but his CFO knows the numbers don't work. It's like watching someone play poker with their cards facing the wrong way." He paused, studying her face for the millionth time, searching for any flicker of awareness. Nothing. "Your Aunt Lauren called again. She wants to know if you'll come stay with her in Atlanta when you wake up. I told her you're a New York girl through and through. You wouldn't last a week without real pizza." The monitor beeped. The IV dripped. Traffic hummed beyond the window. Isaiah reached into his bag and pulled out the worn copy of the Chronicles of Narnia they'd been working through. They were on the 3rd book now. He'd started over twice, afraid she might wake up and be confused about where they'd left off. "Chapter 9, he said softly, opening to the marked page, in which Eustace faces the dragon. His voice filled the quiet room, rich and steady, painting worlds for a daughter who couldn't hear them, but might, just might, feel their presence somewhere in the darkness where she wandered. An hour passed, then 2. At 8:47 p.m., a nurse named Patricia poked her head in. "Evening, Mr. Brooks. You need anything?" "I'm good, Patricia. Thank you." She smiled sadly. "You're always good. That's the problem." After she left, Isaiah set the book aside and just sat there holding Maya's hand, watching the monitors trace their endless patterns of persistence. "Your mom would know what to say right now," he whispered. "She always knew. I'm doing my best, baby. I promise you that." The accident replayed in his mind sometimes, usually late at night when exhaustion lowered his defenses. The rainy evening. The intersection. The truck that ran the red light. The sound of metal crumpling, glass shattering. His wife Sarah's scream cut short. He'd been driving. They'd been arguing about something stupid. He couldn't even remember what now. Some domestic nothing that felt monumental in the moment. Then impact. Then silence. Then 3 years of this. Isaiah stood and stretched, his back protesting the cheap chair's unforgiving contours. He walked to the window and looked out at the city sprawling in every direction, millions of lives intersecting and diverging like some massive, chaotic organism. Somewhere down there, Natalie Whitmore was probably at some exclusive restaurant, closing another deal, building another fortune. She'd asked him to dinner 4 times in the past 6 months. The first time he'd thought it was genuinely about work. The second time he'd started to suspect otherwise. By the 3rd and 4th, her intentions were unmistakable. And every time he'd said no. Not because she wasn't beautiful, she was stunning in that sharp, controlled way that made men stumble over their own ambition. Not because she wasn't intelligent, her mind moved like a chess master's, always 3 plays ahead. But because at 6:11 p.m. every evening he needed to be here, in room 314, holding his daughter's hand, reading her stories, refusing to let her wake up alone in the darkness. Everything else was negotiable. This wasn't. "I know you want me to move on," he said quietly to Maya, though he knew she couldn't hear. "Aunt Lauren says it. The grief counselor I saw twice says it. Even Patricia probably thinks it. But here's the thing, sweetheart. I'm not stuck in the past. I'm waiting for your future." He returned to the chair and opened his laptop, balancing it on his knees. Even here, he worked. The Henderson acquisition model needed refinement. Market projections for the next quarter required analysis. Natalie was right about one thing. He was wasting his potential. But potential meant nothing if Maya woke up to find him gone. Across town, Natalie sat in her penthouse overlooking Central Park, a glass of Petrus balanced on her knee, CNN playing on mute across 4 synchronized screens. Her phone lit up with a message from Claire. He declined the dinner meeting. Natalie wasn't surprised. She was, however, increasingly frustrated. She'd built an empire on reading people, understanding their leverage points, finding the pressure that made them move. With Isaiah, she had nothing. No gambling debts, no career ambitions she could exploit, no social climbing desires, just that mysterious punctuality, that absolute refusal to deviate from his 5:27 p.m. departure. "What are you hiding?" she murmured to the empty room. Her penthouse was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that cost more than most people's cars, art that appeared in Sotheby's catalogs. But it was also profoundly quiet, lonely in a way that 12-hour workdays and billion-dollar acquisitions couldn't quite fill. She dated, of course, other CEOs, venture capitalists, one memorable disaster with a tech billionaire who turned out to be married. But those relationships felt transactional, two ambitious people leveraging attraction for networking opportunities. Isaiah was different. He looked at her like she was just another person, not a conquest, not a connection, just someone. And when she'd finally worked up the nerve 3 weeks ago to ask him directly, no pretense, no corporate cover story, he'd been almost gentle in his rejection. "Ms. Whitmore, I appreciate the interest. Genuinely. But no. Can I ask why?" "You can ask." "Will you tell me?" He'd smiled then, just slightly. "No." It wasn't cruel, wasn't mocking, just honest. And somehow that made it worse. Natalie stood and walked to the window, her reflection ghosting over the park's dark expanse. 29 years old, worth an estimated $900 million, featured in every business magazine that mattered, and she couldn't get one quiet analyst to have dinner with her. She pulled out her phone and opened a contact she rarely used. Marcus Chen, private investigator. Discreet, expensive, completely amoral if the price was right. Her thumb hovered over the call button. This was beneath her. Invasive. Potentially illegal depending on how deep Chen dug. But she needed to know. What made Isaiah Brooks untouchable? She pressed dial. Chen answered on the second ring. "Ms. Whitmore. Been a while. I need background on someone. Complete profile. Financials, property records, daily movements, everything." "This about a business deal?" Natalie hesitated. "Personal interest. Those cost more. I'm aware. Can you start tonight?" "For you?" "Already typing. Name?" "Isaiah Brooks. 30 years old. Works at Titan Crest Capital as a senior financial analyst." "Titan Crest? That's your firm." "I know." Chen was quiet for a moment. "Ms. Whitmore, if this is about an employee relationship, it's not like that. I just need to understand something. How soon can you have preliminary results?" 72 hours for surface level. Deep background takes longer." "Start with surface level." She hung up and immediately felt the weight of what she'd just done. Investigating someone who'd simply declined a dinner invitation. It was petty, obsessive. But Natalie hadn't built an empire by accepting no as a final answer. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through room 314's blinds. Isaiah had slept in the chair again, his neck stiff, his back protesting when he finally stood to stretch. Maya's monitors maintained their steady rhythm. Unchanged, always unchanged. "Morning, baby girl?" He smoothed her hair back from her forehead. I'm going to grab coffee, but I'll be right back. Mrs. Chen from across the hall promised to look in on you. He'd learned to create a network, nurses who genuinely cared, other parents with children in long-term care, the janitor who sometimes sat with Maya during his rounds, telling her stories about his grandchildren in Puerto Rico. It took a village, even in a hospital. The cafeteria coffee was terrible, but Isaiah had long since stopped tasting it. Fuel was fuel. He grabbed 2 cups, one for himself, one for Mrs. Chen, and a muffin that resembled cardboard more than baked goods. His phone buzzed. An email from Natalie's office, marked urgent. Henderson acquisition timeline moved up. Need revised projections by Monday morning. Of course they did. Isaiah pulled out his laptop at a corner table and dove into work, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The cafeteria bustled around him, visitors seeking comfort in bad coffee, staff grabbing quick breaks between shifts, the lost, and the hoping moving through their Saturday rituals. He worked for 3 hours straight, building financial models that would shape a $70 million deal. Around him, the world continued its indifferent spin. At noon, his phone rang. Unknown number. Isaiah Brooks. Mr. Brooks, this is Dr. Rebecca Walsh from Riverside's neurology department. I've been reviewing Maya's recent scans. His heart stopped. Is something wrong? Actually, no. If anything, there might be something right. Her brain activity has shown slight increases over the past 6 weeks. Very subtle, but consistent. I'd like to run some additional tests on Monday. Isaiah's hand trembled around the coffee cup. Increases? What does that mean? Honestly, I don't want to create false hope. It could mean her brain is healing. It could mean nothing, but it's worth investigating. Whatever tests you need, whatever costs, Mr. Brooks will figure out the costs. I wanted you to know because you're here every day. If Maya does show signs of emerging from her coma, your voice might be the bridge that helps her find her way back. After the call ended, Isaiah sat frozen in the cafeteria chair, the bustle around him fading to white noise. 6 weeks of increased brain activity. 6 weeks of something happening while he read her stories about dragons and wardrobes and children who found magic in the most ordinary places. He allowed himself, just for a moment, to imagine Maya's eyes opening, her voice saying his name, her hand squeezing his with conscious intention instead of random muscle movement. Then he locked that hope away before it could destroy him. Hope was dangerous. Hope made the present unbearable. But still, it flickered. Monday morning arrived with rain hammering Manhattan's glass towers. Natalie stood in her office reviewing the Henderson projections Isaiah had submitted overnight. Flawless as usual. The man's mind was a precision instrument. Claire entered without knocking. The preliminary report came in. Natalie looked up. Already? Chen's efficient when motivated. Claire set a manila folder on the desk. He says the deep background will take another week, but the surface level is comprehensive. After Claire left, Natalie opened the folder with hands that shouldn't have been shaking. The first pages were mundane. Yale graduate dean's list, recruited by 3 firms before choosing Titan Crest. Parents deceased, father when Isaiah was 12, mother during his sophomore year at college. One sister, Lauren, living in Atlanta. Then the financial records. Natalie frowned. Isaiah made good money, $120,000 annually plus bonuses, but his bank accounts showed consistent outflows of nearly 85% of his income, not to investments, not to property, to medical expenses. Her pulse quickened as she flipped to the next page. Riverside Neurological Care Center, monthly billing statements. Patient, Maya Brooks, age 11. Diagnosis, traumatic brain injury, persistent vegetative state. Guardian, Isaiah Brooks. The folder slipped from Natalie's fingers. A daughter, in a coma. She scrambled to collect the scattered pages, her hands actually shaking now. Photos from the investigator showed Isaiah entering the hospital every evening at 6:11 p.m., leaving around 10:30 p.m. on weeknights, spending entire weekends there. There were surveillance shots of him sitting beside a hospital bed, reading to a small, still figure. "Oh my God," Natalie whispered. The report continued. The accident 3 years ago. The wife who'd died on impact. The daughter who'd survived but never woken up. The medical bills that consumed Isaiah's life. Specialized care, experimental treatments, physical therapy for a body that couldn't respond. He'd turned down promotions because they required travel, refused late meetings because they interfered with his hospital visits, said no to dinner invitations because at 6:11 p.m. he needed to be holding his daughter's hand. Natalie sat in her chair, the rain streaming down the windows behind her, and for the first time in years, maybe ever, felt genuinely ashamed. She'd thought he was wasting himself. He'd been sacrificing everything. She reached for her phone, then stopped. What could she possibly say? Sorry for investigating you. I'm impressed by your devotion. Can I help? All of it sounded hollow, patronizing. Natalie stood and walked to the window, watching the rain batter the city below. Somewhere in that sprawl, Isaiah Brooks sat at his desk, running numbers for billion-dollar deals, while his daughter lay motionless in a hospital bed. And she'd been annoyed that he wouldn't have dinner with her. The shame deepened into something more complex. Respect, certainly, but also a strange envy. Isaiah had something she'd never possessed. A purpose beyond ambition. A love that demanded sacrifice without promise of return. She'd built an empire. He'd built a vigil. And somehow, standing in her glass tower overlooking Manhattan, Natalie understood which one required more strength. That evening, Isaiah stood in room 314, watching rain streak the windows. Maya's hand rested in his, warm and small and unconscious. So Dr. Walsh wants to run some tests tomorrow, he said quietly. She thinks maybe your brain is healing. Maybe you're trying to find your way back to me. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. I need you to know something, baby girl. If you do wake up, if you come back, everything's going to be different. You've missed 3 years. You'll have questions I don't know how to answer, but we'll figure it out together, okay? Just like we always do. He opened the book to their marked page, but before he could start reading, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Natalie Whitmore. I know I have no right to contact you directly. I know even less right to say what I'm about to say. But I want you to know that I understand now. And I'm sorry. If there's anything, and I mean anything, that Titan Crest's resources can help with regarding Maya's care, please let me know. No strings. No expectations. Just one human to another. Isaiah stared at the message for a long moment. Then he deleted it. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but because some things couldn't be fixed with money or power or good intentions. Some things required only presence, patience, and the quiet, relentless act of showing up every single day at 6:11 p.m., regardless of what the world offered in exchange for absence. He set the phone aside, opened the book, and began to read about dragons and magic and children who learned that love sometimes meant standing watch in the darkness until morning finally came. Outside, the rain fell. Inside, a father read stories to his sleeping daughter. And somewhere between those two truths, hope flickered like a candle refusing to go out. The rain had stopped by Tuesday morning, leaving Manhattan scrubbed clean and glittering under weak autumn sunlight. Isaiah arrived at Titan Crest at 7:45 a.m., earlier than usual, the Henderson projections polished and ready for the executive review meeting at 9. He'd spent most of the night at the hospital. Dr. Walsh had run preliminary tests on Maya, EEG patterns, reflex assessments, response measurements to various stimuli. The results wouldn't be ready until Thursday, but the doctor's cautious optimism had kept Isaiah awake long after he'd returned to his small studio apartment in Washington Heights. Now, functioning on 3 hours of sleep and gas station coffee, he settled into his desk and tried to focus on the numbers that had always been his refuge. Marcus rolled his chair over from the adjacent cubicle. Dude, you look like death. Late night? Something like that. Henderson meetings in an hour. You ready to make Whitmore look brilliant again? Isaiah managed a tired smile. That's the job. Yeah, well, some of us think you should be sitting in that corner office instead of making her rich. Marcus lowered his voice. Word is she tried to poach you for a VP slot again last month. Why'd you turn it down? Personal reasons? Personal reasons don't pay for those shoes you're wearing, and those are definitely payless, my friend. Isaiah glanced down at his worn dress shoes, the leather cracking at the toes despite his best efforts to maintain them. They get me where I need to go. Where you need to go is up, Brooks. You're 30 years old with the brain of someone twice that. Stop settling. Before Isaiah could respond, Claire's voice cut through the floor chatter. Mr. Brooks? Mrs. Whitmore would like to see you in her office before the meeting. Marcus whistled low. Called to the principal's office. Should I clean out your desk? Isaiah stood, straightening his tie. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, the Henderson files are in the shared drive. He took the elevator to the executive floor, that rarefied space where the carpets were thicker and the silence more expensive. Claire offered him a sympathetic smile as he approached Natalie's office. She's been strange this morning, Claire whispered. Distracted, not herself. Isaiah knocked on the glass door. Natalie looked up from her desk, and something in her expression made him pause. She looked tired too, he realized. Not physically exhausted like him, but emotionally worn in a way he'd never seen on her carefully controlled features. Come in, Isaiah. Close the door. He did, remaining standing near the entrance. Professional distance. Natalie stood and walked to the window, her back to him. I owe you an apology. For what? I had you investigated. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Isaiah's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. When? I received the report yesterday morning. She turned to face him, and he saw something that looked almost like shame in her eyes. I had no right. I was frustrated that you kept declining my invitations, and I justified it to myself as due diligence, understanding an employee. But it wasn't about employment. No. She met his gaze directly. It wasn't. Isaiah absorbed this, his mind already calculating implications. What exactly did this investigation reveal? Everything, the accident, Sarah, Maya. Natalie's voice softened on his daughter's name. The medical bills, why you leave at 5:27 every day, why you turn down promotions. He felt exposed, violated in a way that made his skin crawl. Those were his private wounds, his carefully compartmentalized life. She'd had no right to excavate them. I sent you a text last night, Natalie continued, offering help. You deleted it. I did. Can I ask why? Isaiah considered walking out, considered letting his anger show for once, but he was too tired for rage, and some part of him recognized genuine remorse when he saw it. Because Maya isn't a problem money can solve, Ms. Whitmore. She's my daughter, in a coma. She's not a business deal you can acquire or a contract you can negotiate. She's just waiting. And I'm waiting with her. That's not something your resources can improve. Natalie flinched like he'd struck her. You're right. I'm sorry. Are we done? The Henderson meeting... Wait. She moved back to her desk, pulling out a folder. I want to show you something, before you decide I'm completely irredeemable. Isaiah reluctantly stepped closer. The folder contained research, not about him this time, but about traumatic brain injury recovery protocols, experimental treatments, specialists in neuroplasticity, clinical trials at Johns Hopkins and Stanford. I spent all night reading about coma recovery, Natalie said quietly. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I know how to research, and I know how to connect people to resources they might not know exist. Isaiah scanned the documents, his analytical mind automatically cataloging information. Several of these trials were cutting edge, potentially beneficial. Others were long shots wrapped in false hope. Why are you showing me this? Because regardless of what you think of me, Maya deserves every possible chance. Natalie's voice was steady now, businesslike. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering information. What you do with it is entirely your choice. He looked at her for a long moment, trying to reconcile the ruthless CEO with this woman who'd apparently spent her night researching pediatric neurology. Thank you, he said finally. I'll review these with Maya's doctors. That's all I ask. She paused. And Isaiah? I've deleted the investigator's file. No copies. No cloud backups. What I learned stays with me. Why? Because some privacy violations can't be undone, only stopped. She met his eyes. I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. I'm trying to do better. The intercom buzzed. Claire's voice. Miss Whitmore, the Henderson meeting starts in 5 minutes. We'll be right there. Natalie gathered her materials, her professional mask sliding back into place. Your projections were excellent, by the way, as usual. They walked to the conference room in silence, two people carrying different kinds of weight, temporarily aligned by circumstance and unexpected vulnerability. The Henderson meeting went smoothly. Isaiah presented his financial models with quiet authority, while Natalie navigated the political dynamics with surgical precision. By 11:30, they'd secured preliminary agreement on terms that would net Titan Crest a conservative $17 million in profit. Afterward, Marcus cornered Isaiah near the coffee station. What did Whitmore want before the meeting? Just clarification on some numbers. For 90 minutes? Brooks, you were in there forever. Was I? Isaiah checked his watch. He needed to call Dr. Walsh about the tests. Look, I've got to make a call. I'll catch up with you later. He found an empty conference room and dialed the hospital. Dr. Walsh answered on the third ring. Mr. Brooks, I was just about to contact you. The preliminary EEG results are interesting. Isaiah's heart hammered. Interesting good or interesting bad? Potentially good. Maya's brain is showing increased theta wave activity, particularly during the hours you typically visit. Between 6 and 10 p.m., her patterns change measurably. What does that mean? It suggests she might be responding to external stimuli, your voice specifically. Her brain is processing sound on some level, even if she can't consciously respond yet. Isaiah sat down heavily in a conference chair. So she hears me? We can't be certain, but the correlation is strong enough that I'd recommend you continue exactly what you're doing. Read to her, talk to her, maintain that routine. Her brain is creating pathways, Mr. Brooks, slowly but consistently. After the call ended, Isaiah sat in the empty conference room for 15 minutes, his mind spinning through implications. Maya could hear him. 3 years of one-sided conversations hadn't been shouting into the void. She was there, somewhere in the darkness, listening. His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren, his sister. Called the hospital. They said Maya's showing progress? Is that real, or are they trying to be nice? Isaiah typed back, real. Brain activity increasing. Don't know what it means yet. Should I fly up? Not yet. I'll let you know if anything changes. You're not alone in this, Isaiah. You know that, right? He stared at that message for a long time. Alone was all he'd been for 3 years. Alone in hospital rooms. Alone in his apartment. Alone in his choices. Lauren meant well, but she had her own life in Atlanta. A husband, 2 kids, a teaching career. She'd offered repeatedly to take Maya if she woke up, to share the burden. But Maya wasn't a burden. She was his daughter, his responsibility, his purpose. He pocketed his phone and returned to his desk, burying himself in work until 5:27 p.m., arrived like salvation. That evening, Isaiah entered room 314 with the research folder Natalie had given him tucked under his arm. Maya lay unchanged, her monitors painting their familiar rhythms across green screens. Hey, baby girl, big news today. He settled into his chair, taking her hand. Dr. Walsh says you can hear me. Not consciously, maybe, but your brain recognizes my voice. So all those stories about Narnia? You've been listening. He squeezed her fingers gently. Nothing squeezed back. I'm going to keep reading to you every night, and I'm going to look into some new treatments. There's a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins working with theta wave stimulation. Another one at Stanford using targeted neural rehabilitation. He paused. Someone gave me this information. Someone I didn't expect to care. Patricia appeared in the doorway with her evening medication cart. You look different tonight, Mr. Brooks. Almost hopeful. Dangerous emotion, hope. Dangerous but necessary. She checked Maya's vitals, making notes on her chart. You know, I've worked in long-term care for 16 years. I've seen families give up after 6 months. You? 3 years of showing up every single day. That kind of love has power. Not enough power to wake her up. Not yet, but power nonetheless. Patricia smiled. Her brain activity has been changing. We all noticed. The nurses, we talk about it. Maya's fighting her way back. Maybe she learned that from you. After Patricia left, Isaiah opened the Chronicles of Narnia to their marked page. But before he could start reading, his phone rang. Unknown number again. Isaiah Brooks. Mr. Brooks? This is Dr. Jennifer Yao from Stanford Medical Center. I received a referral about your daughter's case from a colleague in New York. Isaiah's pulse quickened. A referral from whom? A Dr. Rebecca Walsh indicated you might be interested in our neural rehabilitation trial for pediatric TBI patients. I've reviewed Maya's medical records with Dr. Walsh's permission, and I believe she could be an excellent candidate. What would the trial involve? Non-invasive electromagnetic stimulation targeting specific brain regions showing recovery potential. The treatment is experimental, but we've seen promising results in patients with similar injury patterns to Maya's. The challenge is that we can only accept 12 participants, and we've already filled 11 slots. Isaiah's hope deflated. Then why are you calling? Because, Doctor, Walsh was very persuasive about Maya's recent progress, and because someone made a rather substantial donation to the research fund this morning, contingent on our expanding the trial to include one additional participant. Your daughter, specifically. What? Who made the donation? The benefactor requested anonymity, but they were quite clear that you should have final say on Maya's participation. No obligation, no strings. Isaiah knew immediately who'd made the donation. The timing was too perfect. The anonymity too pointed. What are the risks? He asked. Dr. Yao spent 20 minutes outlining the protocol, the potential side effects, the realistic expectations. The trial would require Maya's transfer to Stanford for 3 months. Isaiah would need to relocate temporarily. The treatment showed promise but offered no guarantees. I need to think about it, Isaiah said finally. Of course. I'll send you the complete trial information. Take your time, Mr. Brooks. Though I should mention we're starting the next round in 3 weeks. After hanging up, Isaiah sat in stunned silence. Natalie Whitmore had done this. The woman he'd rejected, the CEO who'd violated his privacy, had opened a door that might bring his daughter back. He didn't know whether to be grateful or angry or some complex mixture of both. The next morning, Isaiah arrived at Natalie's office at 7 a.m. before most of the floor had arrived. Claire wasn't at her desk yet. He knocked anyway. Natalie opened the door herself, coffee in hand, clearly surprised. Isaiah, is everything all right? Stanford called me last night. Her expression gave nothing away. I see. The anonymous donation, that was you. I don't know what you're talking about. Ms. Whitmore, Natalie, please. She stepped back, gesturing him inside. And I genuinely don't know what you mean. If Stanford secured funding for their trial, that's wonderful news for Maya. Isaiah studied her face. She was good. He'd give her that. Almost believable. This is exactly what I meant yesterday, he said quietly. Maya isn't a problem to solve. You can't just throw money at her situation and fix it. I'm not trying to fix anything. Natalie's composure cracked slightly. I'm trying to give her a chance. There's a difference. Why? You don't know her. You don't know me, not really. Why would you do this? Natalie walked to her window, that habitual retreat when conversations became uncomfortable. Do you know why I built this company, Isaiah? Really built it? To make money? To prove I mattered. She turned to face him. I was nobody. Scholarship kid from Queens, single mother who worked 3 jobs. I was invisible. So I made myself impossible to ignore. I acquired companies, made fortunes, got my face on magazine covers. And somewhere in all that success, I forgot that mattering means something different than being seen. I don't understand. You matter to Maya, completely. Your entire life is organized around that mattering. And watching you walk out of here every day at 5:27, refusing everything I offered because nothing I could give compared to being present for your daughter. She paused. It reminded me what real strength looks like. Not power, not wealth, just showing up every day for someone who can't thank you or reciprocate or even know you're there. Isaiah felt something shift in his chest, a wall he'd built carefully over 3 years developing a crack. If I did make a donation, Natalie continued, it wouldn't be to fix your problem or prove my worth or earn your gratitude. It would be because Maya deserves every chance to wake up, and because you deserve support that doesn't come with conditions. 3 months in California would mean leaving my job. No, it wouldn't. You could work remotely. We have analysts in 6 states. Or you could take a leave of absence. Your position would be waiting when you returned. You can't promise that. I'm the CEO. I absolutely can promise that. Isaiah stood there, torn between pride and pragmatism, between suspicion and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, accepting help didn't mean failing Maya. "I need to talk to her doctors," he said finally. "Review the trial protocols, understand the risks." "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Natalie moved back to her desk, retrieving a business card. "This is my personal number, not office, not Claire. If you have questions about logistics or need anything arranged, call me directly." Isaiah took the card, studying it. Just her name and a single phone number. No title, no company affiliation. "Why are you really doing this?" he asked. Natalie smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Because I spent 3 years being annoyed that you wouldn't have dinner with me, and about 12 hours understanding why. That kind of humility is uncomfortable. I'm trying to do better." He left her office with more questions than answers, the business card burning in his pocket like a promise or a threat. He wasn't sure which. Over the next week, Isaiah consumed every piece of information about the Stanford trial. He consulted with Dr. Walsh, spoke with Dr. Yao 3 more times, joined video calls with other parents whose children had participated in earlier phases. The results were mixed. Some children showed remarkable improvement. Others showed none. One child had experienced seizures that required hospitalization, though she had eventually stabilized. It was a risk. Everything was a risk. On Friday evening, sitting in room 314 with Maya's hand in his, Isaiah made his decision. "We're going to California, baby girl. There's a treatment that might help your brain heal. It's experimental and scary, and I have no idea if it'll work. But Dr. Yao thinks you're a good candidate, and I have to try. Do you understand? I have to try everything." Maya's monitors beeped their steady response. Unchanged. Unchanging. "We'll leave in 2 weeks. I'm going to rent an apartment near Stanford Medical Center. Aunt Lauren's going to fly out and stay with us for the first month. And I'm going to be right there beside you the entire time, reading you stories and holding your hand and refusing to let you face this alone." He pulled out his phone and dialed the number on Natalie's card. She answered immediately. "Isaiah? I'm accepting the trial slot. We're going to Stanford." There was a pause. Then, "That's wonderful. What do you need?" "Nothing. I can handle the logistics." Let me rephrase. What can I arrange that would make this transition easier? Isaiah hesitated, pride warred with practicality. Housing near the hospital, somewhere accessible. I don't know the area. I have a contact at Stanford from my MBA days. She knows the neighborhoods. I'll have her send you options by tomorrow. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just focus on Maya. After hanging up, Isaiah felt the weight of the decision settle over him like a physical thing. He was uprooting their life, such as it was, betting everything on experimental science and desperate hope. But what was the alternative? 3 more years of vigil? 10? 20? Maya deserved more than his patient waiting. She deserved every possible fighting chance. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a chaos of logistics. Medical records transferred, housing secured, a small furnished apartment 3 blocks from Stanford Medical Center that Natalie's contact had somehow negotiated to temporary corporate housing rates. Work arrangements finalized. Lauren booking her flight. Through it all, Isaiah maintained his routine. 5:27 departure. 6:11 arrival at Riverside. Hours of reading and talking and holding Maya's hand. On his last evening at Riverside, Patricia found him sitting in the hallway outside room 314 at nearly midnight. "Can't sleep?" she asked gently. "Can't stop second-guessing." Isaiah looked up at her. What if the treatment makes things worse? What if I'm putting her through trauma for nothing? Patricia sat down beside him on the cold linoleum floor, her scrubs rustling. "You know what I see when I look at you, Mr. Brooks? I see a father who never gave up. 3 years of showing up when most people would have walked away. You've earned the right to make this choice." Have I? Or am I just selfish, wanting her back so badly I'll risk hurting her? Those aren't mutually exclusive. Love is always selfish. We want the people we love with us. But real love also means fighting for their best chance, even when the outcome's uncertain. She stood, offering him her hand. "Come on, say goodnight to her. You've got a flight in the morning." Isaiah let Patricia pull him to his feet. Together they walked back into room 314, where Maya lay surrounded by machines that had become more familiar than his own apartment. "Hey, baby girl, last night in New York for a while. He took her hand, memorizing the feel of it. Next time we talk, we'll be in California. New hospital, new doctors, same dad who loves you more than anything in this world. The monitors beeped. The IV dripped. Outside, the city hummed its endless song. And somewhere in the darkness behind Maya's closed eyes, theta waves flickered in patterns that suggested listening, processing, waiting for the moment when silence finally broke. The medical transport flight from JFK to San Francisco International felt surreal, like stepping out of one life and into another. Isaiah sat beside Maya's stretcher in the specialized air ambulance, watching her face for any sign of awareness as they crossed the continent at 30,000 feet. Lauren sat across from them, her worry evident despite her attempts at cheerful conversation. Remember when you and Sarah flew out to visit me in Atlanta that first summer? Maya was what, 3? She cried through the entire descent because her ears hurt. She threw up on Sarah's favorite dress, Isaiah said quietly, the memory sharp enough to hurt. Sarah just laughed and said at least Maya had good aim. She would have been proud of you, what you've done for her. I haven't done anything except refuse to give up. That's not nothing, Isaiah, that's everything. The paramedic monitoring Maya's vitals glanced up. We'll be landing in 20 minutes, Mr. Brooks. Ground transport is already waiting at SFO. Isaiah nodded, his hand never leaving Maya's. 3,000 miles from Riverside Neurological, from the routines that had sustained him, from the familiar ache of room 314. He was terrified. Stanford Medical Center rose from the California landscape like a promise wrapped in glass and steel, its trauma wing specifically designed for cases like Maya's. The room they'd assigned her was larger than at Riverside, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a courtyard garden where patients in wheelchairs took afternoon sun. Dr. Yao met them in the hallway, her handshake firm and her eyes kind. Mr. Brooks, Maya, welcome. I know transitions are difficult, but I promise we'll take excellent care of her. When does the treatment start? Isaiah asked. We'll give her 48 hours to stabilize from the journey. Let her body adjust to the new environment. Then we begin baseline assessments Monday morning. Dr. Yao consulted her tablet. I see Dr. Walsh sent comprehensive notes. Maya's theta wave activity has been increasing consistently? Every evening between 6 and 10 p.m., when I'm with her. Remarkable. That kind of pattern recognition suggests preserved neural function despite the coma state. Very encouraging for our protocol. After Dr. Yao left, Isaiah and Lauren spent the afternoon arranging Maya in her new room. Isaiah positioned the chair at the same angle as Riverside, hung the small framed photo of Sarah on the side table where Maya might see it if she woke, placed the worn copy of Chronicles of Narnia on the windowsill. You're recreating Riverside, Lauren observed. Consistency matters. If she can hear me, feel my presence, then the environment should feel familiar. Or maybe you're the one who needs the familiar. Isaiah didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. That evening, at exactly 6:11 p.m., Isaiah sat beside Maya's bed in this new room, 3,000 miles from home, and began to read. His voice filled the unfamiliar space, painting worlds of magic and wardrobes and children who discovered they were braver than they knew. The next morning, Isaiah woke in the small, furnished apartment Natalie's contact had arranged, disoriented by the lack of ambulance sirens and car horns that usually comprised his Manhattan soundtrack. The California silence felt oppressive. His phone showed 3 missed calls from work and a text from Natalie. How's the first night? Everything you need? He typed back, settling in. Thank you for the housing arrangements. Her response came immediately. The Henderson acquisition closed yesterday. Your projections were perfect as usual. No rush on returning to work. Take the time you need. Isaiah stared at that message. Take the time you need? As if time were something he controlled, something he could portion out according to preference rather than desperate necessity. Lauren emerged from the second bedroom, already dressed. I'm going to grab coffee and scope out the neighborhood. You want anything? I'm heading to the hospital. Isaiah, it's 6:30 in the morning. Visiting hours don't start until 8. They'll let me in. Lauren sighed but didn't argue. She'd learned over 3 years that reasoning with her brother about Maya was futile. Text me if you need anything. The hospital staff did let him in, recognizing the particular desperation of a parent who'd crossed a continent for hope. Maya looked small in the California morning light, her monitors painting the same eternal rhythms as New York. "Good morning, baby girl. We made it. New hospital, new doctors, new chance." Isaiah took her hand, the gesture as automatic as breathing. "Dr. Yao seems confident. The treatment starts Monday. Between now and then, it's just us, like always." He pulled out his laptop and began reviewing financial reports, Maya's steady breathing a counterpoint to his typing. This had become his version of normal. Hospital rooms as office space, medical equipment as ambient noise, the unconscious presence of his daughter as the only colleague that mattered. Around 10 a.m., a nurse named Carmen came in to check vitals. "You're the New York dad, right? Dr. Yao told us about you. 3 years of daily visits?" "Something like that. My cousin's kid was in a coma for 18 months after a diving accident. Family stopped visiting after 6 months. Said it was too hard." Carmen adjusted Maya's IV line with practiced efficiency. "He woke up alone. Took him 3 days to stop crying. You're doing right by her being here." After Carmen left, Isaiah sat in the silence those words created. 3 days of crying for a child who woke to emptiness instead of love. He couldn't imagine. Wouldn't imagine. His phone rang. Natalie. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hello?" "Isaiah, I hope I'm not interrupting. I'm at the hospital. What's going on?" "Nothing urgent. I just wanted to check in, make sure the apartment is adequate." "It's fine. More than fine." There was a pause. "I'm actually in San Francisco. Flew in this morning for a meeting with a tech acquisition target. I know this is probably inappropriate, but I wondered if you'd like to grab coffee. No agenda. Just coffee." Isaiah's first instinct was to refuse, but something stopped him. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the realization that Natalie had done more for Maya in 2 weeks than most people would consider doing for a stranger. "There's a cafe 2 blocks from Stanford Medical. Brewster's. I could meet you there at 2. "I'll be there." He hung up, wondering what exactly he'd just agreed to. At 1:55 p.m., Isaiah kissed Maya's forehead and promised to be back by 5. Lauren had arrived to sit with her, bringing magazines and terrible daytime television. "You're leaving before 5:27? Lauren looked genuinely shocked. "Did hell freeze over?" "I'm meeting someone for coffee. I'll be back in plenty of time." "Someone? Who's someone?" "A colleague. It's not a big deal." "You haven't had coffee with a colleague in 3 years, Isaiah. This is absolutely a big deal." He left before she could interrogate him further. Brewster's was exactly the kind of place Stanford grad students would frequent. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, a chalkboard menu featuring 6 varieties of single-origin pour-over. Natalie sat in a corner booth, looking oddly out of place in her tailored suit among the hoodies and backpacks. "You came," she said as he approached. "You sounded like it mattered." "It does. Sit, please." Isaiah slid into the booth across from her, suddenly aware of how this might look to anyone watching. CEO and employee. Woman and man. 2 people sharing coffee in the middle of a weekday. "How's Maya adjusting to the new environment?" Natalie asked. "She's stable. That's all we can ask for right now." "And you? How are you adjusting?" Isaiah shrugged. "California's quieter than New York. I'm not sure I like it." Natalie smiled slightly. "I grew up in Queens. The silence out here makes me nervous too. Like something's wrong if you can't hear sirens." A barista brought their coffee, complicated drinks that Natalie had apparently ordered in advance. Isaiah's was perfect, the exact combination of espresso and steamed milk he would have chosen himself if asked. "How did you know how I take my coffee?" he asked. "I pay attention." She took a sip of her own drink. 3 years of watching you at the office coffee station. You're consistent." "That sounds like surveillance. That sounds like noticing someone." Natalie set her cup down carefully. "Look, I know this is weird. I know I have no real right to be here or to care how you're doing. But the truth is, I do care. And I wanted to see for myself that you and Maya were settled." "Why?" "Because I've spent my entire adult life building a company and somehow forgot to build a life. And watching you sacrifice everything for your daughter made me realize that what I thought was success was actually just expensive loneliness." She met his eyes. "You have something I've never had, Isaiah. Purpose that matters beyond quarterly earnings." Purpose doesn't pay hospital bills. No, but it pays in ways money can't measure. Natalie paused. Can I ask you something personal? You already investigated my entire life. How much more personal can it get? She flinched but didn't deflect. Fair point. Do you ever resent Maya? For the life you've given up? Isaiah was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in slow circles. You want the truth? Sometimes I'm angry, not at her, never at her, but at the situation, at the drunk driver who ran that red light, at the universe for taking Sarah and leaving Maya in limbo, at myself for not seeing the truck sooner. You were driving? We were arguing about something stupid. I don't even remember what. Some petty married couple nonsense. I saw the truck too late, swerved. Sarah's side took the impact. His voice cracked slightly. She died instantly. Maya's been dying slowly for 3 years. Some days I don't know which is crueler. Natalie reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. I'm sorry. That's inadequate, but I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choices. I live with them. What you're doing isn't just living with choices. It's choosing love every single day despite impossible odds. That's not obligation. That's devotion. Isaiah looked at this woman who'd disrupted his carefully controlled life, who'd violated his privacy and then tried to make amends, who sat across from him now with something raw and honest in her expression. Why did you really fly to San Francisco, Natalie? She was quiet, then laughed softly. Honestly, the acquisition meeting was real, but I could have video conferenced. I came because I wanted to see you, to make sure you were okay, to remind myself that not everything in life can be managed from a corner office. She stood, gathering her bag. Thank you for the coffee, and for not telling me to go to hell, which you'd have been justified in doing. Wait, Isaiah stood too. What happens now? With us, I mean. Professionally. Nothing changes unless you want it to. You're still my best analyst. When you're ready to return to work, your position is waiting. If you need more time, take it. If you decide California suits you better than New York, I'll write you a reference that could get you hired anywhere in the country. She smiled sadly. I'm trying very hard not to make this about what I want, Isaiah. For once in my life, I'm trying to just be a decent human being. She left before he could respond, walking out into California sunshine that seemed too bright for the conversation they'd just had. Isaiah returned to the hospital at 4:47 p.m., earlier than his usual schedule, but needing the familiar anchor of Maya's presence. Lauren looked up from her magazine with knowing eyes. So, how was coffee with your colleague? Complicated. She's pretty, isn't she? This colleague. Lauren, I'm not judging. You're allowed to have coffee with attractive colleagues. You're allowed to have an entire life beyond these hospital walls. Maya is my life. No, honey. Maya is your daughter. Your life is supposed to include more than vigil keeping. Lauren stood, gathering her things. I'm going to head back to the apartment. Make something for dinner. You'll be home by when, 10? Probably closer to 11. She kissed his cheek. Sarah would want you to be happy, you know, not just dedicated. Happy. After she left, Isaiah sat in the familiar chair and took Maya's hand, trying to organize his thoughts. The conversation with Natalie had unsettled something in him, shifted a perspective he'd held fixed for 3 years. Your Aunt Lauren thinks I should have a life beyond you, he said quietly to Maya. She's probably right. But here's the thing, baby girl. You are my life, not in some tragic, sacrificial way. You're literally the reason I wake up every morning, the reason I work hard and save money and refuse to give up. If that makes me obsessed or unhealthy, or whatever term the grief counselors would use, I don't care. The monitors beeped their response, steady, eternal. Tomorrow, Dr. Yao starts the baseline assessments. Next week, the actual treatment protocol begins. Electromagnetic stimulation targeted at your neural pathways. It sounds like science fiction, but so does everything about modern medicine when you think about it. He squeezed her hand gently. I need you to fight, Maya. I need you to want to come back as much as I want you here. Can you do that for me? Monday morning arrived with typical California perfection. Cloudless skies, mild temperatures, the kind of weather that made New Yorkers question their life choices. Dr. Yao arrived at Maya's room at 8 a.m. sharp with a team of specialists and enough equipment to fill a small truck. Good morning, Mr. Brooks. Ready to begin? Isaiah stood, suddenly nervous. What exactly happens during baseline assessment? We map Maya's current neural activity patterns using advanced EEG technology. Then we test responses to various stimuli: sound, light, touch, even smell. The goal is to identify which areas of her brain are most receptive to external input. That information guides where we focus the electromagnetic therapy. For 3 hours, Isaiah watched as doctors attached sensors to Maya's head, played tones at different frequencies, shined lights at varying intensities, applied gentle pressure to her hands and feet. Maya remained motionless through it all, her vitals unchanging. But the monitors told a different story. Theta waves spiked when Isaiah spoke to her. Delta patterns shifted when they played classical music. Brief gamma bursts appeared when they stroked her palm with textured materials. Dr. Yao reviewed the data with barely contained excitement. This is excellent. Maya's brain is much more active than her physical state suggests. Look here. When you read to her, her auditory cortex lights up like she's actively processing language. Isaiah stared at the screen, watching colored patterns bloom and fade across a digital map of his daughter's brain. She can understand me? We can't be certain about conscious understanding, but her brain is definitely receiving and processing your voice. That's why maintaining your evening routine is so critical. You're literally exercising her neural pathways. That evening, Isaiah read to Maya with new intensity, imagining her brain lighting up with each word, creating connections that might someday lead her back to consciousness. Lauren sat in the corner, tears streaming silently down her face as she watched her brother perform his nightly ritual of desperate hope. The next 2 weeks fell into a new rhythm. Mornings with Lauren at the apartment, attempting normalcy through shared coffee and forced conversation about topics that didn't matter. Days at the hospital watching Maya undergo increasingly complex treatments. Evenings reading until his voice grew hoarse and the night shift nurses gently suggested he go home. And through it all, Natalie's presence remained a quiet background hum. She texted occasionally, never intrusive, always brief. Updates about work, an article about a new TBI treatment study. Once, just a simple "thinking of you and Maya today." Isaiah didn't know what to do with that attention. Part of him resented it as interference. Part of him found it unexpectedly comforting to have someone beyond Lauren who seemed genuinely invested in Maya's outcome. On Thursday of the second week, Dr. Yao called Isaiah into her office with an expression he couldn't read. "Is something wrong?" he asked immediately. "No, actually, something might be very right. Sit down, please." Isaiah sat, his heart hammering. Dr. Yao turned her computer screen toward him, showing another map of Maya's brain activity. "This is from yesterday's session, and this is from this morning. See the difference?" Isaiah studied the patterns. There's more activity in the frontal lobe. Significantly more. The electromagnetic therapy is creating new neural pathways at a rate we rarely see. Maya's brain is literally rewiring itself around the damaged areas. Dr. Yao leaned forward. "I want to be clear. This doesn't guarantee she'll wake up, but it does suggest her brain is healing in measurable, meaningful ways." "How long before we know if it's working?" That's the frustrating part. Neural recovery doesn't follow predictable timelines. Some patients show physical responses within weeks, others take months or years. But the science is clear. Maya's brain is fighting to recover. The question is whether her consciousness can find its way back through the pathways we're helping create. Isaiah left the office in a daze, hope and terror warring in his chest. Progress was happening, real, measurable progress. But it still might not be enough. That evening, he sat beside Maya's bed and told her everything Dr. Yao had said. "Your brain is healing, baby girl, building new roads around the damaged parts. You're so strong, stronger than I ever knew. Your mom would be so proud." For the first time in 3 years, Isaiah allowed himself to imagine a specific future. Maya waking up, asking questions. Relearning how to walk, to eat, to be 11 years old in a world that had moved on without her. It terrified him more than the coma ever had. Because with hope came vulnerability. With progress came the possibility of devastating regression. His phone buzzed. "Natalie. Lauren told me about the good news from Dr. Yao. I'm so happy for you both." Isaiah stared at that message. Lauren had Natalie's number? When had that happened? He called his sister. "You've been talking to Natalie?" "She called last week to check on Maya's progress. We talked for an hour. She's actually really nice once you get past the CEO armor." "You gave her updates about my daughter." "Our niece. And yes, I gave her updates to someone who clearly cares about both of you. Don't be mad." Isaiah wasn't mad. He was confused. His carefully compartmentalized life was developing leaks, people and emotions bleeding across boundaries he'd maintained for 3 years. "She likes you, you know," Lauren said gently. "Like, genuinely likes you. Not just attracted. She respects you in a way that's actually kind of beautiful." "This isn't the time for romance, Lauren." "I'm not suggesting romance. I'm suggesting you let someone help carry the weight. You've been doing this alone for so long. You don't have to anymore." After hanging up, Isaiah sat in the darkening room watching Maya's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Lauren was right. He didn't have to do this alone. But alone was what he knew. Alone was safe. Alone meant nobody could disappoint him or abandon him or die in a car crash that shattered everything. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Natalie. "Thank you for everything. I don't know how to repay you." Her response came quickly. "You don't repay kindness. You just accept it and maybe pass it forward someday." "How are you holding up?" "Scared, hopeful, confused. All of it at once." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." "Want company?" "I'm actually in Palo Alto tonight. Different acquisition meeting. I could bring terrible hospital cafeteria coffee and sit quietly if you need someone who understands complicated." Isaiah looked at Maya's sleeping face, then at his phone, then back at his daughter. The old Isaiah would have said no, would have maintained his boundaries and his solitude and his belief that strength meant bearing everything alone. But 3 weeks in California had taught him something. Sometimes strength looked like acceptance, like letting someone witness the vigil without having to explain why it mattered. "Room 412. I'll be here until 11. On my way." 45 minutes later, Natalie appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of truly terrible hospital coffee and looking uncertain in a way he'd never seen on her face before. "Is this okay?" she asked. "I can leave if it's too much." Isaiah gestured to the chair Lauren usually occupied. "It's okay. Actually, it's kind of nice, not being alone." Natalie sat down, her eyes immediately going to Maya. "She's beautiful. She looks like you around the eyes. She has her mother's everything else." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds coming from medical equipment and distant hallway conversations. Natalie didn't try to fill the quiet with platitudes or advice. She just sat there, present and patient, waiting for Isaiah to speak if he wanted to or not speak if he didn't. Finally, he said, "Tell me about your acquisition meeting, something that has nothing to do with hospitals or hope or any of this." So she did. She talked about the tech startup she was evaluating, the brilliant founder who didn't understand business basics, the due diligence process that felt more like detective work than finance. Isaiah listened, grateful for the glimpse into a world where problems had solutions and outcomes could be predicted with reasonable accuracy. At some point, he started talking too. About the Stanford Protocol, about Dr. Yao's cautious optimism, about his terror that progress might reverse as quickly as it had appeared. "Hope is so much harder than despair," he said quietly. "Despair is certain. Hope keeps you suspended in maybe, and maybe is exhausting." Natalie nodded. "When I was building Titan Crest before we became profitable, I spent 2 years living in maybe. Maybe we'd make payroll. Maybe investors would come through. Maybe the whole thing wouldn't collapse. I hated it. Wanted either success or failure, just something definitive." "What changed?" "I learned that maybe is where everything important happens. Success and failure are just endpoints. Maybe is the actual living part." Isaiah looked at her with new appreciation. That's unexpectedly philosophical for a finance CEO. "I contain multitudes," she smiled. "Even heartless corporate raiders occasionally have thoughts." "I never thought you were heartless." "No? What did you think?" "That you were lonely and trying very hard not to be." The words hung between them, honest and uncomfortable. Natalie's smile faded into something more vulnerable. "You're not wrong," she said quietly. At 11 p.m., Isaiah walked Natalie to the hospital entrance. The California night was cool and clear, stars visible in a way they never were in Manhattan. "Thank you for coming," Isaiah said. "I didn't realize how much I needed someone to just sit with all this." "Anytime. Genuinely." Natalie hesitated, then asked, "Would it be okay if I visited again when I'm in the area for meetings?" Isaiah should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, should have protected the carefully constructed life that revolved entirely around Maya. Instead, he said, "I'd like that," and meant it. Natalie's visits became a pattern over the next 3 weeks, though never predictable enough to feel routine. She'd text from the airport saying she had meetings in the Bay Area, then appear at the hospital around 8 p.m. with coffee or sometimes dinner from whichever restaurant she'd discovered that day. She never stayed long, never overstayed her welcome, and never asked for anything in return except the quiet privilege of sitting in room 412 while Isaiah read to Maya. Lauren noticed, of course. Sisters always did. "She's falling for you," Lauren said one morning over breakfast in the apartment. "You know that, right?" Isaiah focused intently on his eggs. "She's being supportive. There's a difference. Supportive people send flowers or make donations. They don't fly across the country twice a week to sit in hospital rooms. Her company has West Coast interests. The trips are legitimate business." Lauren laughed. "Keep telling yourself that. Meanwhile, the rest of us can see what's happening." "Nothing's happening. My daughter is in a coma. Everything else is background noise." "Isaiah," Lauren's voice softened, "you're allowed to feel something for someone who cares about you. It doesn't diminish what you feel for Maya or Sarah's memory." He stood abruptly, clearing his plate. "I need to get to the hospital. Dr. Yao scheduled another assessment this morning." Lauren didn't push further, but her knowing look followed him out the door. The assessment that morning was the most comprehensive yet. Dr. Yao's team spent 4 hours mapping Maya's neural activity, testing responses, measuring infinitesimal changes that might indicate progress or regression, or simply the random noise of a brain caught between states. Isaiah watched it all from his corner chair, his laptop balanced on his knees in a pretense of working while his entire focus remained on the screens showing his daughter's brain fighting its way toward consciousness. Around noon, Dr. Yao pulled him into the hallway. Her expression was carefully neutral in that way doctors had when they were about to deliver news that could swing either direction. "The electromagnetic therapy is definitely working," she began. "Maya's neural plasticity is remarkable. Her brain is creating new pathways faster than we typically see in pediatric TBI cases." "But," Isaiah heard the unspoken qualifier, "but there's still no sign of consciousness returning. Her brain is healing, but she's not waking up. The two don't always correlate the way we'd like them to." "What does that mean for treatment? Do we continue?" "Absolutely. The protocol is designed for 12 weeks, and we're only at week 7. But I want to manage expectations, Mr. Brooks. Neural recovery is happening. That's unquestionably positive. Whether it translates to Maya opening her eyes..." She paused. "That's still uncertain." After the doctor left, Isaiah stood in the hallway for 10 minutes, processing the weight of sustained maybe. Progress without breakthrough, hope without resolution. He'd become an expert at living in that liminal space, but it never got easier. His phone buzzed. "Natalie, how did the assessment go?" He typed back, "Her brain is healing. She's still not waking up. I'm sorry, that must be so hard. It's just more of the same. Different state, same waiting. I'm flying in tomorrow for a board meeting. Dinner afterward. You need to eat something that isn't hospital cafeteria food." Isaiah hesitated. Dinner felt different than coffee or quiet hospital visits. Dinner felt like a date, and dating was something that belonged to a version of himself that had died 3 years ago in a rainy intersection. But Lauren's words echoed, "You're allowed to feel something for someone who cares about you. What time? 7? There's a place in Palo Alto, Cafe Venetia. Nothing fancy, just good food." "Okay." He sent the message before he could second-guess himself, then immediately regretted it. What was he doing? Maya lay in a hospital bed fighting for consciousness, and he was agreeing to dinner with a woman who'd investigated his private life and then tried to buy her way into his good graces. Except that wasn't fair. Natalie had done more than throw money at his problems. She'd shown up, listened, sat with him in the hardest moments without trying to fix them. That was worth something. Maybe worth dinner. That evening, he told Maya about the assessment results while reading their current book, a fantasy novel about a girl who discovered magic in unexpected places. Dr. Yao says your brain is getting stronger, building new roads to help you find your way home. I know it's taking a long time, baby girl. I know you're tired, but you can't give up, okay? I need you to keep fighting. The monitors beeped their unchanging response. Isaiah had long since stopped expecting different. I'm having dinner with someone tomorrow night. Natalie, you haven't met her, but she's been helping us. Helping you. He paused, searching for the right words. She's someone who understands complicated. I think your mom would have liked her. She's fierce and smart, and doesn't let anyone push her around. Kind of reminds me of you, actually. The you I remember, anyway. He stayed until 11:30 that night, reading until his voice grew rough and the night nurse gently suggested he go home and rest. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Isaiah tried to work, reviewing financial models for a Titan Crest acquisition he was consulting on remotely, but his mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. What did one wear to not-quite-a-date dinner with a billionaire CEO? His wardrobe consisted of hospital-appropriate casual and work-appropriate professional, neither of which felt right. Lauren solved the problem by taking him shopping, overriding his protests with sisterly authority. You can't wear those khakis that have been through 3 years of hospital sitting, she declared, steering him into a men's store that made him anxious just looking at the price tags. Natalie's worth $900 million. The least you can do is wear pants that fit. This is ridiculous. It's just dinner. It's never just dinner. Lauren held up a shirt in soft gray cotton. This, with those dark jeans, trust me. An hour and several $100s later, money he really shouldn't be spending, but Lauren insisted was an investment in his future, Isaiah stood in front of the apartment bathroom mirror, barely recognizing himself. The new clothes fit properly. His hair, freshly cut at Lauren's insistence, no longer looked like he'd been running his hands through it in hospital waiting rooms. He looked almost like the person he'd been before the accident, before the coma, before 3 years of vigil had carved themselves into his features. "You look handsome," Lauren said from the doorway. Sarah would approve. The mention of Sarah hit harder than expected. "I don't know if I can do this." "Do what? Have dinner with another human being? Isaiah, you're not betraying anyone by living your life." "It feels wrong. Maya's in that hospital bed and I'm getting dressed up for dinner." "Maya's in that hospital bed whether you eat cafeteria food alone or have a nice meal with someone who cares about you. The only difference is your own misery level." Lauren squeezed his shoulder. "Go. Enjoy a few hours of being more than just a father keeping vigil. You're allowed." A Café Venetia occupied a converted Victorian house in downtown Palo Alto, its interior all exposed brick and candlelight, and the kind of understated elegance that only came from having nothing to prove. Natalie was already seated when Isaiah arrived, and the sight of her made him pause in the doorway. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down instead of pulled back in her usual severe professional style. Without the armor of her corner office and power suits, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more human. She stood when she saw him, her smile genuine and just uncertain enough to be endearing. "You came. I was worried you might change your mind." "I almost did, multiple times." "Honesty, I appreciate that." She gestured to the seat across from her. "I ordered wine. Hope that's okay. If not, I can—" "Wine's fine. Great, actually." They sat, and for a moment the silence stretched awkwardly between them. Two people who'd shared hospital vigils and late-night conversations, suddenly unsure how to navigate normal social interaction. Finally, Natalie laughed. "This is weird, right? I'm not imagining how weird this is?" "Extremely weird," Isaiah agreed, and the admission broke the tension. They ordered food, pasta for her, risotto for him, and fell into conversation that felt easier once they stopped trying to force it. She talked about her board meeting, the acquisition target that was trying to inflate their valuation, the venture capitalist who'd mansplained her own industry to her for 20 minutes. Isaiah found himself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in months. "What did you say to him?" I thanked him for the elementary overview, then recited every metric that proved he was wrong about their market position. Then I bought his company out from under him. She took a sip of wine, eyes sparkling with mischief. Petty? Yes. Satisfying? Extremely. Remind me never to mansplain finance to you. You wouldn't. You're not that kind of arrogant. You're the other kind. What other kind? The kind who doesn't realize how brilliant you are. The kind who hides behind being adequate when you're actually exceptional. She leaned forward slightly. Do you know how many analysts I've worked with in 10 years? Hundreds, maybe thousands. You're the only one whose models I never have to double-check because I know they'll be perfect. Isaiah felt heat rise in his face. They're just numbers. They're never just numbers. They're stories about risk and reward, future potential, human behavior translated into quantifiable prediction. You're not just good at math, Isaiah. You're good at understanding what numbers mean in the messy context of real life. You're giving me way too much credit. I'm giving you exactly the credit you're due, which is something you're apparently terrible at accepting. The food arrived, temporarily derailing the conversation. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that felt companionable rather than awkward. Finally, Isaiah asked the question that had been bothering him since she'd first reached out. Why me? You could have anyone. Venture capitalists, other CEOs, people in your own world who understand your life. Why waste time on a single father with impossible baggage? Natalie set down her fork, considering her answer carefully. Do you remember that first time you turned down my dinner invitation? The very first one, before I knew about Maya? Vaguely. I'd spent 3 hours that morning negotiating with a private equity firm, won every point, made them agree to terms they didn't want, felt invincible. Then I asked you to dinner, and you said no. Just no. Not maybe, not let me check my schedule, just a polite, firm no. That made you interested? That made me curious. Nobody tells me no. I'm not bragging, it's just fact. I'm rich and successful and generally get what I want. But you weren't impressed by any of that. You looked at me like I was just another person, not a conquest or a networking opportunity or a way to advance your career. You were my boss. Saying yes would have been complicated. That's not why you said no, though. You said no because at 5:27 p.m. you had somewhere more important to be. You had a daughter who needed you. That kind of priority, that kind of unwavering devotion to something beyond yourself. She paused. That's what I found fascinating, and then attractive, and then essential. Isaiah absorbed this, turning her words over like stones smoothed by water. I'm not that noble. I'm just doing what any parent would do. Most parents don't, trust me. I've seen the statistics on children in long-term care facilities. Visitor frequency drops dramatically after 6 months. You're approaching 3.5 years of daily presence. Maya's all I have left of Sarah, of our family. Of course I'm going to show up. And that right there is why I keep flying across the country to sit in hospital rooms with you. Natalie reached across the table, her hand resting palm up in invitation. You don't see yourself clearly, Isaiah. You think you're just doing the minimum, just surviving. But you're actually demonstrating the most profound kind of love, the kind that persists without reciprocation, without guarantee, without end. Isaiah looked at her offered hand for a long moment. Taking it would mean something, would acknowledge something he wasn't sure he was ready to feel. But he took it anyway. Her fingers were warm, her grip gentle but certain. They sat like that for several heartbeats, two people separated by vast differences in wealth and circumstance and life experience, connected by something neither could fully name. I don't know what I'm doing, Isaiah admitted quietly. With you, I mean, with any of this. Neither do I. I've built a billion-dollar company, but I'm completely lost when it comes to actual human connection. We can be lost together if you want. That's possibly the worst pitch I've ever heard. Natalie laughed. I'm better with spreadsheets than romance. They finished dinner talking about easier things, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the small, ordinary details that build connection brick by brick. Isaiah learned that Natalie was terrified of dogs after being bitten as a child, that she'd once dreamed of being a teacher before economics captured her attention, that she still called her mother every Sunday despite their complicated relationship. She learned that Isaiah had played piano as a teenager, that he'd proposed to Sarah at a terrible diner in New Haven at 2 a.m. because he couldn't wait until morning, that he missed his parents with an ache that never quite faded despite 15 years of their absence. "What were they like?" Natalie asked. "Your parents." "My dad was a high school history teacher. Loved jazz and terrible puns, died of a heart attack when I was 12. My mom worked as a nurse, raised me and Lauren alone. She died during my sophomore year at Yale, cancer. She fought it for 2 years, but..." He shrugged. "Sarah was the one who got me through that loss. She basically moved into my dorm room, made sure I ate, made sure I didn't drop out. I probably wouldn't have graduated without her." "She sounds amazing." "She was. She could light up a room just by walking into it, always found the good in people, even when they didn't deserve it. Maya got that from her. That optimism, that ability to see possibility everywhere. Maya got your determination, though. 3 years in a coma and her brain is still fighting to heal. That's all you." Isaiah smiled sadly. "I hope you're right. I hope when she wakes up she remembers she's a fighter. When, not if. I like that." They left the restaurant around 9:30, stepping out into California evening that smelled like jasmine and eucalyptus. Natalie had called a car, but Isaiah said he'd walk the 15 minutes back to his apartment. "Thank you for dinner," he said. "I didn't realize how much I needed normal human interaction until tonight. Thank you for giving me a chance, despite the investigator and the invasion of privacy and my generally terrible first impression." They stood facing each other on the sidewalk, the space between them charged with possibility and uncertainty. Natalie stepped closer, and Isaiah's heart rate kicked up in a way that had nothing to do with anxiety and everything to do with the woman standing inches away. "Can I kiss you?" she asked quietly. "Or is that too much too soon?" "Probably too much too soon," Isaiah admitted. "But I think I'd like it anyway." She rose on her toes and kissed him gently, briefly, a question mark instead of a declaration. When she pulled back, her eyes searched his face. "Too much?" she asked. "Not enough," he said, surprising himself. This time when she kissed him, it lasted longer, deepened into something that made the rest of the world fade to background noise. It had been so long since Isaiah had been kissed, since he'd felt desire instead of exhaustion, possibility instead of grief. When they finally broke apart, Natalie was smiling. "I should let you go. You have a daughter to visit." "I do, but thank you for this, for being patient with my complicated life." "Your life isn't complicated. It's just full of love. There's a difference." Her car arrived, and Isaiah watched her drive away before starting his walk home. His mind spun with the evening's events, trying to reconcile the person who'd just kissed Natalie Whitmore with the person who'd spent 3 years living in hospital waiting rooms. Were these the same person? Could they be? Lauren was still awake when he got home, reading on the couch. She took one look at his face and grinned. "How was dinner?" "Good, really good." "You kissed her. How do you possibly know that?" "Because you look like a man who just remembered he's allowed to be happy." She set down her book. "I'm proud of you, little brother." "For kissing someone?" "For letting yourself feel something other than grief for the first time in 3 years. Isaiah sat down heavily in the armchair. "I still feel like I'm betraying Sarah. Like being happy means I've moved on." "Moving on isn't betrayal. It's survival. Sarah loved you. She'd want you to live, not just exist." "You didn't know her." "I knew her enough to see how she looked at you, like you were her whole world. And I know that kind of love doesn't demand eternal suffering as tribute. It demands you keep living." Isaiah let those words settle, testing them against the guilt he'd carried like a second skin. Maybe Lauren was right. Maybe Sarah would want him to find joy again, find connection, find something beyond the endless vigil. Or maybe he was just rationalizing selfishness. The next morning, Isaiah arrived at the hospital at his usual time to find Dr. Yao waiting outside room 412 with an expression that made his stomach drop. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "What happened?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, something very interesting happened overnight." Dr. Yao gestured him into the room where Maya lay surrounded by additional monitoring equipment. The night staff noticed increased brain activity starting around 3 a.m. Different patterns than we've seen before. I want to run some tests." "What kind of patterns?" "Patterns consistent with REM sleep. Isaiah, Maya's brain might be dreaming." The world tilted slightly. Dreaming? People in comas can dream? It's rare, but possible. And in Maya's case, it suggests her consciousness might be trying to resurface. The electromagnetic therapy may have accelerated her recovery beyond what we anticipated. For the next 3 hours, Isaiah watched as doctors ran test after test, mapping the electrical storms in Maya's brain that suggested thought, processing, perhaps even awareness. He barely breathed, afraid that acknowledging the possibility might somehow jinx it. Around noon, Dr. Yao pulled him aside again. We're going to increase the electromagnetic stimulation frequency. Based on these results, I think Maya is ready for more aggressive intervention. Is it safe? There are always risks with experimental treatment, but Maya's response has been so positive that I believe the benefits outweigh the dangers. However, you have final say. If you want to maintain the current protocol, do it, Isaiah said immediately. Increase the frequency, whatever gives her the best chance. That afternoon, they began the new protocol. Isaiah sat beside Maya's bed watching doctors attach additional sensors, calibrate equipment, make minute adjustments to electromagnetic fields he couldn't see but desperately hoped were working. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Thinking about you and Maya today. How are things? He sent back. They're changing her treatment protocol, increasing stimulation frequency. Dr. Yao thinks her consciousness might be trying to resurface. That's incredible. Do you need anything? Just good thoughts? Maybe prayers if you're the praying type? Not usually, but I'll make an exception. For Maya. The rest of the day passed in a blur of medical procedures and cautious optimism. Isaiah read to Maya during breaks in the treatment, his voice steady even as his hands shook with the weight of hope he'd tried so hard not to carry. That evening, Lauren joined him for the vigil. They sat on opposite sides of Maya's bed, brother and sister united in their desperation for the small girl who'd been silent for so long. Do you think she'll remember us? Lauren asked quietly. If she wakes up, will she know who we are? Dr. Yao says memory is complicated. She might remember everything or nothing or pieces that don't quite fit together. We won't know until she opens her eyes. What will you tell her? About Sarah? Isaiah had thought about this question 1,000 times over 3 years. The truth, that her mom loved her completely, that the accident wasn't anyone's fault, that Sarah would give anything to be here with her now. And about Natalie? What about Natalie? Lauren gave him a knowing look. You're falling for her. Don't bother denying it. What will Maya think about Dad having someone new in his life? There's no Dad having anyone. We're friends. She's been supportive, that's all. Keep telling yourself that. Lauren reached across the bed to squeeze his hand. For what it's worth, I think Maya would like her, and I think she'd want you to be happy. At 10:47 p.m., long after Lauren had gone back to the apartment, Isaiah sat alone with Maya in the quiet room. The new treatment protocol had completed hours ago, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. Big changes today, baby girl, he said softly. New treatment, new hope. Dr. Yao thinks you're dreaming. I wonder what you dream about. Your mom, school, the life you had before all this? He paused, gathering courage for words he'd never spoken aloud. I met someone. Her name's Natalie. She's smart and kind and surprisingly funny once you get past the intimidating CEO thing. I don't know what it means or where it's going, but I like her. And I feel guilty about that, like I'm supposed to stay frozen in the moment we lost your mom. But I'm also tired of being frozen, tired of just existing instead of living. The monitors beeped their eternal rhythm, unchanged. I need you to know that nobody will ever replace your mom. She was my first love, my best friend, the person who made me believe I could be more than I thought possible. But she's gone, baby, and I'm still here, still breathing, still hoping, still trying to figure out how to be your dad in a world that doesn't include her. Isaiah wiped at his eyes, surprised to find them wet. I think she'd like Natalie. Your mom always appreciated people who didn't back down from challenges. And Natalie faces down billion-dollar corporations without flinching. They'd probably have debated politics and literature until 3 a.m, both of them stubborn and brilliant and unwilling to concede. He squeezed Maya's hand gently, willing her to squeeze back, to give any sign that she heard him. Nothing. I love you, sweetheart. more than I can possibly express. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, every theta wave your brain produces fighting toward consciousness. That's all that matters. You're all that matters. Please keep fighting. Please find your way back. The night stretched on, quiet and full of possibility, while Isaiah kept his vigil and Maya's brain painted patterns of dreams across monitors that tracked the impossible journey from darkness toward light. The increased electromagnetic stimulation protocol continued for 2 weeks, each day bringing subtle changes that Dr. Yao tracked with cautious optimism, and Isaiah monitored with barely contained hope. Maya's brain activity patterns grew stronger, more complex, showing bursts of gamma waves that suggested higher cognitive processing. But she still didn't wake up. Isaiah had learned to live in the space between progress and breakthrough, but it was wearing him down in ways he hadn't anticipated. The hope was harder than the despair had been. Despair had been solid, something he could grip and carry. Hope was slippery, constantly threatening to either dissolve into nothing or crystallize into devastating disappointment. Natalie had flown in twice more since their dinner, each visit feeling more natural than the last. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm. She'd arrive at the hospital around 8 p.m., bring food or coffee, sit with Isaiah while he read to Maya. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in companionable silence. Once, she'd fallen asleep in the chair across from him, and Isaiah had watched her sleep with a tenderness that scared him. He was falling for her, had already fallen, if he was being honest with himself. And that terrified him almost as much as the thought of Maya never waking up. On a Thursday morning in week 10 of the Stanford Protocol, Isaiah arrived at the hospital to find Dr. Yao practically vibrating with contained excitement. "We need to talk," she said, pulling him into her office before he could even reach Maya's room. Isaiah's heart hammered. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She's more than okay. Look at this." Dr. Yao pulled up brain scans on her computer, pointing to areas highlighted in brilliant colors. "This is Maya's scan from yesterday. And this is from this morning. See the difference?" Isaiah studied the images, his analytical mind cataloging changes even as his emotional self struggled to process their meaning. The frontal cortex. There's significantly more activity. Not just more activity, organized activity. Patterns consistent with conscious thought, Isaiah. Her brain isn't just healing anymore, it's waking up. The room seemed to tilt. Isaiah gripped the edge of the desk. "When? How long?" "I can't give you an exact timeline. Neural recovery doesn't work like that. But based on these patterns, I'd estimate we're looking at days, not weeks, maybe hours." Dr. Yao's professional composure cracked into a genuine smile. "I think your daughter is coming back to you." Isaiah couldn't speak. 3 years, 4 months, and 19 days of waiting, and now Dr. Yao was telling him it might be hours. "What do I do?" he finally managed. "Exactly what you've been doing. Be there, talk to her, read to her. Let your voice be the bridge she follows back to consciousness." Dr. Yao stood, gesturing toward the door. "Go. Be with her. I'll be monitoring her scans continuously. If anything changes, you'll know immediately." Isaiah walked to room 412 in a daze, his legs moving on autopilot while his mind spun through possibilities. Maya waking up. Maya speaking. Maya asking questions he didn't know how to answer about the 3 years she'd lost and the mother who wouldn't be there to greet her. He entered the room and stopped short. Lauren was already there, sitting beside Maya's bed with tears streaming down her face. "They told you?" Isaiah asked. "Dr. Yao called me an hour ago, said I should be here, said Maya might wake up soon." Lauren looked up at him with a mixture of joy and terror. "I don't know whether to celebrate or panic." "Both, definitely both." Isaiah took his usual chair, reaching for Maya's hand with fingers that trembled. "Hey, baby girl, big news today. Dr. Yao thinks you're almost ready to open your eyes, and I'm here. I'm right here. Whenever you're ready, I'm waiting." The morning passed in tense anticipation. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting monitors, speaking in hushed, encouraging tones. Dr. Yao stopped by twice to review the latest scans, each time looking more confident that consciousness was imminent. Around noon, Isaiah's phone buzzed. "Natalie. Just landed in San Jose, heading to a meeting but wanted to check in. How's Maya?" He stared at the message for a long moment before typing, "Dr. Yao thinks she might wake up soon. Maybe today." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Oh my God. Do you want me to come to the hospital? I can cancel the meeting." "No, keep your meeting. I'll let you know if anything changes. I'm here if you need me. For anything. I mean that." Isaiah pocketed his phone and returned his attention to Maya. Her face looked peaceful in the afternoon light streaming through the windows, but he thought he detected something different in her expression. Attention that hadn't been there before, like she was concentrating on something just beyond reach. "Come on, sweetheart," he whispered. "You're so close. Just a little bit further." At 2:47 p.m., Maya's right index finger twitched. It was so slight Isaiah almost missed it. But he was holding her hand, had been holding it for hours, and he felt the movement against his palm. "Lauren," he said quietly, not daring to raise his voice. "Did you see that?" "See what?" "Her finger. It moved." They both stared at Maya's hand. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then her finger twitched again, more deliberately this time. Lauren ran to get Dr. Yao while Isaiah stayed frozen in his chair, afraid that moving might somehow interrupt whatever was happening. His daughter's finger was moving. After 3 years of absolute stillness, she was moving. Dr. Yao arrived with her team, all of them maintaining professional calm while their eyes betrayed excitement. They ran quick assessments, tested reflexes, shined lights. "Her brain activity is spiking," one of the residents reported. "Multiple regions showing simultaneous engagement." "Isaiah, keep talking to her," Dr. Yao instructed. "Your voice is what she's following." He leaned close to Maya's ear, his voice shaking. "I'm here, baby. Dad's right here. You're doing so great. Just keep coming back. Follow my voice. Come back to me." Maya's eyes moved beneath her closed lids, rapid back-and-forth movements that suggested dreaming or processing or consciousness trying to surface. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she made a sound. Not a word. Just a small vocalization, somewhere between a sigh and a moan, but it was intentional, deliberate. The first sound she'd made in 3 years, 4 months, and 19 days. Isaiah's vision blurred with tears. "That's it, sweetheart. I hear you. I'm listening." Another sound, slightly stronger. Her lips moved, trying to form words her voice couldn't quite reach. The monitors screamed with activity, every screen showing brain function exploding across regions that had been dark for years. Dr. Yao and her team moved with controlled urgency, adjusting equipment, documenting everything, preparing for the moment that seemed increasingly inevitable. At 3:14 p.m., Maya's eyes opened. Not fully, just a flutter, then a crack, then wider as she struggled against the brightness and confusion and overwhelming sensory input of consciousness after years of darkness. Her gaze was unfocused at first, wandering across the ceiling, the monitors, the unfamiliar room. Then it found Isaiah's face, and something shifted in her expression. Recognition. The word was barely a breath, her voice raw from disuse. "Daddy?" Isaiah's world exploded and reformed in that single moment. Every hour of vigil, every night of reading to silence, every prayer he'd never quite believed would be answered, all of it crystallized in his daughter's confused but conscious gaze. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." He couldn't stop the tears now, didn't even try. "You did it. You came back." "Where?" Maya's eyes drifted closed, then opened again with obvious effort. "What happened?" "You were in an accident, sweetheart, a long time ago, but you're safe now. You're going to be okay." "Mom?" The question broke him. "Where's Mom?" Isaiah glanced at Dr. Yao, who nodded slightly. There was no good way to do this, no gentle path through devastating truth. "Mom didn't make it, baby. I'm so sorry. She loved you so much, but she didn't make it." Maya's face crumpled with confusion and grief. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. I don't understand." "I know, and we'll explain everything, but right now you just need to rest. You've been through so much." Dr. Yao stepped forward gently. "Maya, I'm Dr. Yao. You're at Stanford Medical Center. You've been unconscious for a while, and your body needs time to recover. We're going to take excellent care of you, okay? Maya's gaze drifted to Lauren, standing in the corner with her hands over her mouth. Aunt Lauren? Hi, sweetie. Lauren managed through tears. I'm here too. Why do I... Maya struggled to keep her eyes open. Why do I feel so strange? Your brain has been healing, Dr. Yao explained in the calm, measured tone of someone practiced in delivering complex medical information to frightened patients. You're going to feel confused and tired for a while. That's completely normal. The best thing you can do right now is rest. But Maya fought against the exhaustion pulling her back down, her eyes finding Isaiah's face again. Don't leave. Never, he promised. I'm staying right here. She managed the smallest smile before her eyes closed and her breathing deepened into sleep. But this time, it wasn't the absolute stillness of coma. Her eyes moved beneath her lids. Her fingers twitched occasionally. Her face showed expressions, peace, then confusion, then something that might have been sadness. She was sleeping. Actually sleeping. Processing and dreaming and being conscious even in rest. Dr. Yao checked her vitals one more time, then gestured for Isaiah and Lauren to follow her into the hallway. That was remarkable, she said quietly. The emergence was textbook perfect. Maya's consciousness returned exactly as we'd hope. Gradual, responsive, oriented enough to recognize familiar faces. What happens now? Isaiah asked, his voice still shaking. Now we monitor. She'll drift in and out of consciousness for the next few days as her brain adjusts to being awake. Each time she surfaces, she'll be more alert, more aware, more herself. We'll start gentle physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. The recovery process will be long, but Isaiah, she's awake. Your daughter is awake. Lauren threw her arms around Isaiah, both of them crying and laughing and holding each other up. 3 years of accumulated grief and hope and exhaustion poured out in that hospital hallway, while doctors and nurses smiled and gave them space to process the impossible miracle they'd just witnessed. Isaiah's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to find a text from Natalie. How's everything? Thinking of you. His hand shook as he typed. She woke up. Maya woke up. The response came instantly. Oh my God. Isaiah, I'm coming to the hospital. Is that okay? Yes. Please. An hour later, Natalie appeared in the doorway of room 412, slightly out of breath, like she'd run from the parking lot. Her eyes found Isaiah's, and whatever she saw in his face made her stop short. She's sleeping, he said quietly, gesturing to Maya's bed. Real sleep this time. She woke up around 3, talked a little, asked about Sarah. What did you tell her? The truth, that her mom didn't make it. Isaiah's voice cracked. I've had 3 years to prepare for that conversation, and I still didn't know how to do it. Natalie moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his. There's no good way to deliver that kind of news. You did the best anyone could. They stood together watching Maya sleep, her chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of consciousness rather than the mechanical persistence of coma. She looked peaceful, younger somehow, like the 8-year-old she'd been when the accident happened rather than the 11-year-old she'd become in absence. I should let you have privacy, Natalie said after a moment. This is family time. Stay, Isaiah said quickly. Please, I want you here. She searched his face, then nodded. Okay. Over the next 2 hours, Maya drifted in and out of wakefulness. Each time she opened her eyes, she seemed more aware, more present. She recognized Lauren consistently now, asked basic questions about where they were and why, struggled to understand the gap between her last memory and present reality. I remember the car, she said during one lucid period, her voice growing stronger with each emergence. It was raining. You and Mom were arguing about something. We were, Isaiah confirmed gently. Nothing important, just silly adult stuff. Then there was a loud sound, and then she frowned, trying to access memories that weren't there. Nothing, just dark and quiet, and sometimes I heard your voice, but I couldn't answer. You heard me reading to you? I think so. Like a dream that kept happening, stories about lions and witches and magic. Isaiah felt something break open in his chest. 3 years of reading to silence, and she'd been listening, Somewhere in the darkness, his daughter had heard him and held on. "The tall lady," Maya said suddenly, her eyes finding Natalie. "Who are you?" Natalie stepped forward, her usual confidence tempered by obvious nervousness. "I'm Natalie. I'm a friend of your dad's." "Just a friend?" Leave it to an 11-year-old to cut through diplomatic phrasing. Isaiah laughed despite himself. "It's complicated, baby." "That means more than friends, but you don't want to say so." Maya's gaze moved between them with surprising clarity for someone who'd been unconscious for 3 years. "It's okay. I think Mom would want Dad to have someone." The simple, generous statement hit Isaiah harder than he'd expected. His 8-year-old daughter had woken up 11 and somehow possessed wisdom beyond her years. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything." Maya drifted off again, leaving the 3 adults in weighted silence. "She's remarkable," Natalie said quietly. "You raised an incredible kid." "Sarah raised an incredible kid. I'm just trying not to mess up what she started." Over the next week, Maya's periods of wakefulness lengthened and deepened. She began physical therapy, struggling with a body that had forgotten how to respond to conscious commands. Her muscles had atrophied during the coma, despite the hospital's best efforts to prevent it, and relearning basic movements was frustratingly difficult for a girl who'd been running and jumping and dancing just 3 years prior. But Maya approached recovery with determination that reminded Isaiah painfully of Sarah. She didn't complain when therapy hurt. She didn't cry when progress felt impossibly slow. She just kept trying, kept pushing, kept believing her body would eventually remember what consciousness demanded of it. Isaiah was there for every session, every small victory, every moment of frustration. And increasingly, Natalie was there too. She'd rearranged her schedule to spend more time in California, working remotely from a hotel in Palo Alto, showing up at the hospital with books and puzzles and gentle encouragement. Maya warmed to her quickly, with the easy acceptance of a child who understood that grief and new affection weren't mutually exclusive. "Tell me about my mom," Maya asked Natalie one afternoon while Isaiah was in a meeting with Dr. Yao. "Dad has trouble talking about her without crying." Natalie glanced at Lauren, who nodded encouragement. "I never met your mom, sweetheart, but your dad talks about her sometimes. She sounds like she was brilliant and funny and saw good in everyone." "She made the best chocolate chip cookies," Maya said quietly, "and she used to sing really badly in the car. Dad would pretend to be embarrassed, but he loved it." "What else do you remember?" "She always smelled like vanilla, and she read books with different voices for each character, and she told me I could be anything I wanted if I worked hard enough." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I miss her." "Of course you do. That's okay. Missing people we love is how we keep them with us." "Do you think she'd like you, for my dad?" Natalie took a careful breath. "I hope so. I think your mom and I would have had some fierce debates about politics and business, but I think we both would have agreed that your dad is pretty special and deserves to be happy. He's been sad for a long time, hasn't he?" "Yes, but he's also been strong and devoted and refusing to give up on you. That takes a different kind of courage than being happy does." Maya considered this with the seriousness of someone processing concepts too complex for her age. "I think Mom would like you. You're smart and you make Dad smile different than he used to." "Different how?" "Like he forgot how, and you're helping him remember." When Isaiah returned from his meeting, he found Maya, Natalie, and Lauren engaged in an animated discussion about whether pizza should ever have pineapple as a topping. The sheer normalcy of it, his daughter arguing about food preferences, his sister laughing, the woman he was falling for defending unconventional culinary choices, almost undid him. This was what life could look like. Not just surviving, but actually living. Joy and debate, and people who cared about each other doing the mundane work of being together. 2 weeks after waking up, Maya took her first unassisted steps. Isaiah and 2 physical therapists hovered nearby, ready to catch her if she fell, but Maya's face showed pure determination as she shuffled 5 agonizing steps from the parallel bars to a waiting wheelchair. "I did it," she said, breathless and triumphant. "Dad, did you see?" "I saw, baby. I'm so proud of you." That evening, Dr. Yao called a meeting to discuss Maya's continued care. The Stanford protocol had exceeded every expectation, but Maya would need months of rehabilitation before approaching anything like her pre-accident baseline. The question is where that rehabilitation happens, Dr. Yao said. We can continue here at Stanford, or you could transition to a facility closer to your home in New York. Both have advantages. Isaiah looked at Maya, who'd been included in the conversation at her own insistence. What do you think, sweetheart? Do you want to stay in California or go back to New York? Where are you? Maya asked simply. Wherever you are. Then I don't care about the place. I just want us to be together. Isaiah glanced at Natalie, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding, possibility, the recognition that geography mattered less than the people occupying it. Actually, Natalie said carefully, I've been thinking. Titan Crest has been considering opening a West Coast office. If Isaiah wanted to stay in California, I could make that happen. New role, good salary, work that doesn't require him to abandon Maya's recovery. You do that? Isaiah asked. I do a lot of things to keep you in my orbit. She smiled. Both of you. The decision crystallized over the next few days. Isaiah would stay in California, working remotely for Titan Crest, while Maya continued rehabilitation at Stanford. Lauren would return to Atlanta with the promise of monthly visits, and Natalie would divide her time between New York and a new West Coast office that suddenly became a company priority. 3 months after Maya woke up, Isaiah and Maya moved into a small house in Palo Alto with a yard and accessible features for someone still relearning their body's capabilities. Natalie helped them move in, bringing furniture and groceries and steady, patient presence. This is weird, Maya observed, watching Natalie and Isaiah work together to assemble a bookshelf. But good weird. What's weird about it? Isaiah asked. Having a family again, different than before, but still a family. Natalie froze, clearly uncertain how to respond to being included in that designation. Maya saved her the trouble. It's okay to be part of our family. We're good at sharing. 6 months after waking up, Maya walked into her new school without assistance. Her gait still slightly unsteady, but her determination absolute. She'd been nervous about starting 6th grade as the new kid with the tragic backstory, but Isaiah had worked with the school to ensure she was treated normally rather than like a miracle or a victim. Isaiah watched her disappear into the building, his heart simultaneously proud and terrified. Natalie's hand found his. She's going to be fine. Better than fine. I know. It's just hard letting her out of my sight after 3 years of constant vigilance. You're allowed to be nervous. First day of school is terrifying for every parent. You just have more reason than most. They walked back to the car hand in hand, a gesture that still felt new enough to make Isaiah's pulse quicken. They'd been officially together for 4 months now, navigating the complexities of building a relationship while Maya healed and work demands pulled Natalie between coasts. It wasn't perfect. Some days the distance felt insurmountable. Some days Maya struggled with grief that therapy could help but not erase. Some days Isaiah wondered if he was being selfish pursuing happiness while his daughter still bore scars from tragedy. But most days felt like this. Good and complicated and full of the messy reality of people loving each other imperfectly but persistently. One evening in late autumn, almost a year after Maya's awakening, Isaiah found her sitting in the backyard watching sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her on the grass. "Mom, whether she can see us from wherever she is." "I'd like to think so." "Do you think she's mad? About Natalie?" Isaiah pulled Maya close, letting her lean against his shoulder. "I think your mom loved us so completely that all she'd want is for us to be happy and to keep loving each other and to live the biggest, fullest lives we possibly can. Natalie helps us do that." "I like her," Maya said quietly. "A lot. But sometimes I feel bad for liking her, like I'm forgetting Mom." "You could never forget your mom. She's part of you, part of who you are. Loving Natalie doesn't diminish that. Love isn't finite, baby. It just grows to include more people." Maya was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Are you going to marry her?" Isaiah laughed, caught off guard. "I don't know. Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" "Yeah, I think it would. But can we wait a little? I'm still getting used to all the changes." "We can wait as long as you need." They sat together as the sky darkened from orange to purple to the deep blue of California evening. In the distance, a neighbor's dog barked. A car passed on the street. Life continued its ordinary spin. Inside the house, Natalie was making dinner, probably burning something given her admitted lack of cooking skills. But she was trying, showing up, choosing them day after day despite the complications and the grief and the reality that loving someone meant accepting their whole messy history. Maya had been right months ago. It was weird, but it was good weird. The kind of weird that felt like healing, the kind of weird that felt like hope, the kind of weird that felt like family. 2 years after the accident that had shattered everything, Isaiah Brooks stood in the backyard of a California house he never planned to own, his daughter alive and healing beside him, the woman he loved humming off-key in the kitchen, and felt something he'd thought lost forever. Gratitude. Not for the tragedy, never for that, but for the resilience that had carried them through it. For the second chances that shouldn't have been possible but somehow were. For the complicated, imperfect, beautiful reality of loving people brave enough to keep fighting their way back to consciousness and connection. Maya squeezed his hand. "Dad, I'm glad you waited for me." Isaiah squeezed back, tears in his eyes for the millionth time since she'd opened hers. "I'd wait forever, baby girl. You're worth every second." And he meant it with every fiber of his being. The vigil had ended, but the love that had sustained it, patient, relentless, refusing to surrender even in darkness, that love would last forever.